So what can we expect from a Guild Wars 3? This is a very intriguing question in my opinion. I want to really analyze this from a very nerdy perspective. So please bear with me, grab a cup of tea, and enjoy the ride. As always, special thanks to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon that help me keep the lights on. And now let's start with a big disclaimer. We don't know anything for sure, so this is just educated guesses at this point. And I want to make sure that you understand that, because it's actually not something that I can tell you, especially as a new player. We don't even know if Guild Wars 3 is coming. So if you are currently debating if you want to start out with Guild Wars 2, this is not, so to say, a video that should keep you from doing so. Guild Wars 2 is an amazing game. You can play it for thousands of hours. And even if there will be a coming out of Guild Wars 3, you will not be sad about it. Be sure to understand that. And now with this disclaimer out of the way, let's jump straight in. So what might Guild Wars 3 be? I have some really interesting data here by Hendricher, and special credits and shoutouts to this player here. And this is really interesting because we have immense amount of data about how the job postings were. So I want to analyze and really nerd out about this, because this is something that is really interesting to make educated guesses about what they're actually working on. What is the unannounced project? Because if you analyze all the job postings we had over the last years at this point, yeah, and just sum up the words and just look over what they actually wrote in there, you can draw some conclusions that you would otherwise not be able to draw. So, shall we? So you can see we have here, at the time of this recording, we have 52 posts on different job postings in Guild Wars 2 since 2021 to this date. So we have, the last post was from 29th of May 2025, which before we actually had some kind of drought where there was no postings, but we had posts since 2021. And if you look at what was actually mentioned in those posts, you can make a nice table, as you can see here. Link to this spreadsheet is by the way in the description. Again, big shout outs and thanks to Hendricher for this, coming up with this one. And you can also see what they are looking for, not only the specific job post, but also what kind of thing they mentioned in this post, what is about the job that they. So they talked about Unreal Engine, and this is the most important one. They mentioned that in every single blog post, almost, that they want to have some experience in Unreal Engine. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. It could mean that they want to develop it on Unreal Engine 4 or Unreal Engine 5 or whatever Unreal Engine, or that they just need someone that has experience with that so that they can make their own engine. We don't know what we can draw out of that, but we have another crazy interesting amount of words that are in there, like early access, like free to play, live service. That was mentioned to some extent as well. You can't draw that many conclusions out of that one as well. It's just about like what was mentioned. You can draw a conclusion as a whole. Yeah. So we have action player, stories. We have AAA game. That's a very promising one. So that means it's not something that is supposed to be running in the background. It's just a small game that a few people play. No, they want to make a crazy big game and want to have people that are experienced in managing something like that. They even mentioned console at some point. That's also very interesting. We have crazy amounts of immersive world building, RPG style, so it's quite interesting. It's similar to Guild Wars 2, what you would describe it, but maybe even more than that, because open world, immersive world, it's not something that is always the case for Guild Wars 2, because you have those boundaries between the zones. So maybe that's actually something new, something more modern. Multi-platform was mentioned, that's obviously quite nice as well. And just in general, MMORPG, online multiplayer, and those kind of words. So it's probably going to be something that has multiplayer in there, will be online. If it's really an MMO or an MMORPG, we can't tell, because they actually mentioned most of the time MMO and not MMORPG. What can you draw out of that? We don't know. But this is a very interesting summary, and you can see they actually looked for quite a lot of people and they apparently found them. So that means that we actually have a lot of people working currently in the background that we don't have any clues what they are working on, which could be the Guild Wars 3. So now with that much out of the way, with this nerd analysis of that, what actually happened in the background, we can draw some conclusions. At least I try to draw some conclusions and possibilities, and I want to list them here. And please, as always, let me know your opinions in the comments as well. And if you want to see more future videos, be sure to subscribe, because I will always cover this topic, because it's something that is very dear to my heart. So now let's jump to the possibilities. So the first possibility I see out of this is that it will be a fully new developed game which has no link to the Guild Wars franchise whatsoever. This is a possibility that I see that could be happening. ArenaNet wants to develop a game to have a different point of getting money without having the need to be always dedicated to the Guild Wars franchise. I think that makes sense. I'm not sure if that's really the case, because I feel like the Guild Wars franchise is really good for them. So we will see. That could also be something that they are working on, for example, for NCSoft. We don't know. They could also, so to say, have some outsourcing going on from NCSoft, and they do their job and develop a game like maybe even Aeon 2. We don't know. Could be. So that is the first possibility. I think it's not the most likely one, but it could be. The second possibility is just a relaunch of Guild Wars 2 in Unreal Engine or something similar. That could happen. Something like, I don't know, maybe Final Fantasy XIV Online, something like this. Just a relaunch of the game with crazy new updated graphics and just more better engine, more modernized version of the game. And I don't know how a relaunch of Guild Wars 2 will look like. That's just a possibility, because they mentioned so much of new stuff that is hinting at Unreal Engine or something modern engine and stuff that could hint at a new game, but it could also hint at just a relaunch of Guild Wars 2 at this point. We don't know. Could happen. So I think this is also not the most likely possibility, but it could be. I have no, so to say, proof that this will not be the case. At least I don't have. Then the third possibility is, I would say, quite likely, might be one of the likeliest ones. Guild Wars 3 will come out. This is the one that, so to say, I was talking here and teasing in the beginning of the video, as a better Guild Wars 2. So what does that mean? It has more modern graphics, it has more modern engines, so that means you can develop more content, not use the spaghetti code of Guild Wars 1's engine in Guild Wars 2, and has a lot of problems currently to get more content out. This will not be the issue for Guild Wars 3 as a better Guild Wars 2. It will be the same game in regards of the genre and how you play it, as a multiplayer game that has, so to say, PvE, maybe even PvP and World vs. World open world stuff. Is just like a clone of Guild Wars 2 with a lot of improvements. I think that will be a big hit if that will be the case, if they do it well, but it will instantly kill Guild Wars 2. I think that will be just the case, that if this is the case, Guild Wars 2 will be run, it will be like Guild Wars 1, it will still be up to date, they will never shut it down. I think they will just leave it in permanent maintenance mode. But the player base will drop drastically, because Guild Wars 3 is just a better, more modernized version of it. And if they do it like that, it's also quite likely that they will also introduce something like the Hall of Monuments for Guild Wars 1 into Guild Wars 2, so that you get some kind of rewards or skins or something attached to it that you get for playing Guild Wars 2, so that you get some incentive to play Guild Wars 2 until Guild Wars 3 comes out. I think that makes sense. That is the most likely scenario for me, that they will make a clone about it, and this is the best new outcome for players that enjoy Guild Wars 2. I'm not sure if it's the overall most likely possibility here, because the fourth version is like, it will be a game that is like somewhat in the franchise of Guild Wars, but it's not an MMO, or it's not a clone of Guild Wars 2 at least. It's a multiplayer online game, maybe something like Path of Exile, like just ARPGs in that kind of direction, Diablo style, something like that. And just let's say an action RPG that has some kind of multiplayer attached to it, maybe something like Warframe, where you have just interactions with other people, but not in an open world for the most part, like in Guild Wars 2, where you have crazy amounts of meta events that you engage in. That's the main focus on the game. It's more like a single player, maybe small party driven game. That could be the case. That also hints with the table that I showed you. There are some mentions there that actually are not really pointing towards an MMO, more like to an RPG. Could be even a complete RPG, we don't know. Single player game or something similar, we don't know. I think this is also a very likely possibility, that they just want to have a different approach at what they actually want to do in the future, not only focus on Guild Wars 2 as an MMO, maybe focus on Guild Wars 3 as something that is more RPG driven. And in this scenario, Guild Wars 2 can still run in tandem. I think that is actually something that is quite likely in this scenario, because then you have Guild Wars 2 as the open world MMO, and you have Guild Wars 3 as the newer, but more focused down to an RPG kind of audience. And both of them could be updated if they have the resources for that in tandem. I think that is the most likely scenario in that way. But like I said, I don't know which possibility of those four that I just mentioned is the most likely one. I think the third and fourth one is probably way more likely than the first or second one. How can we draw more conclusions out of this? I think the next studio update will be a very, very hot one. So the last studio update we just got a few days ago, where we saw the next few months. So we saw what will happen in June, July, and August. We know that we will get the expansion in October, the next one, the expansion 6. So we will get either just in September a roadmap, or we will get it after the expansion drop. So that means the next roadmap will tell us the next few months after the expansion, pretty likely. And if there will be some kind of new update, and the release schedule and the stuff will be similar to the expansion 5 that we had with Chance Wilds and even with Soto, the same update schedule, balancing schedule and stuff, if everything is exactly the same, then that's a good thing. But if they will not announce any expansion with it, that's an interesting thing, because they, at the last time, they actually mentioned that they are already working and are confirming that we have an expansion 6, even though Chance Wilds was not even out yet. If they don't confirm that after the expansion 6, so to say, after the cycle there, they will again put out another expansion with the next roadmap. I think that's the place where you would do that. Then it's actually very interesting, and you could draw the conclusion that they're actually really working on a Guild Wars 3 and Guild Wars 2 is, so to say, going slowly in maintenance mode. That could be happening. I think the most likely scenario, if this is the case, will that Guild Wars 2 will never be stopped. The development will always be, so to say, be up to date. I think it will just receive no big expansions anymore. I think it will just receive small events, updates, maybe some quality of life fixes and that kind of stuff, but no crazy big content drops with 4 maps at once, or like 2 maps in the latest expansion, stuff like that. I think that will not happen anymore. Just maybe a small map every half a year or something like that. But the development will not be the main focus. The main focus will of course be Guild Wars 3. I think that will be the most likely scenario if this roadmap actually shows this. I think the argument that the next expansion will be the last one is quite likely if this is the case. Let me know your comments on this. I think this is a very interesting analysis and a very interesting debate that you can start here. Of course, that's only the beginning. I think you can make a lot of more, so to say, more wild predictions about this, but this is quite data-driven and data-based, I would say. It's not completely drawn from thin air. So let me know your takes on this, if you agree with me, or if you have any other comments on this. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. As always, special shout out to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon that help me keep the lights on. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.